My name's Andrew Roberts. I'm a visual effects supervisor. I live in Los Angeles. I'm originally from South London. Growing up, I was artistically inclined. I think a lot of that was from my father, who was a carpenter, and he introduced the concept of design and creating things to myself and my siblings, my two brothers and sister. And so I really enjoyed classes like design and technology and drafting classes, graphical communication. But in 1970s London time I was growing up, there wasn't really any clear direction. And of course, visual effects and just the computer graphics industry was in its infancy, really. So it took me a while to find a role that really clicked for me. So I did a number of jobs initially. I worked at a hospital in a medical school doing medical illustration and creating coursework for doctors. I spent some time as a CAD draftsman and enjoyed that, actually taking some of those design skills and bringing it into the computer world. And then I also worked for a few years as an analyst programmer. But it was when I got hired at Autodesk that things started to kind of take shape for me. I worked for them. Initially, it was as a quality control technician, but then pretty quickly I moved on to becoming a technical writer for them and localizing the documentation that would come from the States. And then we'd put the U back in color and adjust things to British building standards. And it was on an overseas writing trip from the UK. I was sent to Sausalito to work as part of a group on a release of AutoCAD. That I was introduced to software designer Gary Yost. And he was working with the Yoast group on what was the first version of 3D Studio. He gave me a copy of it and he asked me to just play with it and give him feedback. And it was from that point that I was just hooked. Then I was getting into 3D. I switched from writing at that point at Autodesk to becoming more of a support person. I'm doing phone support, producing marketing material, talking at trade shows about the capabilities of 3D Studio, and eventually became what we know as 3ds Max. And through that phone support, I started to become introduced to artists and designers and engineers and various people that were using the tool for just in different ways. And that was really interesting to me, that these worlds were opening up each time I picked up the phone and I was hearing, oh, wow, this guy's designing a watch with it and someone else is doing animation. I joined a games company in '93, Bits Corporation. And that was when I started to grow as an artist. I think before that, it even felt pretentious for me to use the word artist because I was from more of that technical background. But now I was surrounded by creatives, people who were really focused on graphics for entertainment, and we were building 3D worlds. And it was a very interesting, formative time for me. I'd say sort of a big springboard for me was in '94. I was sent to SIGGRAPH in Orlando. And then I was just really immersed with just the world of art and the craft of animation and computer graphics. I'd never, ever been to something like the Electronic Theatre. Those 3 hours of just concentrated material of the best work from all over the world. And I just found that incredibly inspirational. And just sort of being there, I mean, back in those days, SIGGRAPH was just so much bigger and, people spent money. And, you were just surrounded by that global talent. And so it was a truly amazing time for me. After that, I worked as a freelance artist for a while. I was comfortable enough using Macs and various tools. So I was working on music videos and doing commercials in London. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a really fantastic time. I was working just with one other artist out of his front room. We had a couple of machines and he would get the jobs and we would both work on it. And it was just a really, really rewarding, very creative time. So the bureaucracy of previous companies was behind me and we were just creating and it was awesome. And then in '97, I moved, I agreed to join two friends that I'd worked with at that games company to move to LA. And our plan was to create this media company. And so my wife and I said, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's do this. It will be an adventure for us. That lasted about a year. The person that with the financial backer decided that that wasn't where he wanted to put his money. And so after about a year, it closed down. And so I had to then shift from being an executive. That was my plans and hopes, that now it's like roll up your sleeves and, do what you can to make a living and keep a roof over our heads. And so I really focused on my career as a 3D artist, working as a generalist, and then over the years as a CG supervisor at various companies across LA, places like Digital Dimension, which was a great place where there was a lot of growth for me. I got to learn so many things about working within a team, taking notes from clients, and just sort of managing your time and figuring out sort of like how to approach scenes, as well as things like naming convention and file structures. And they introduced me to going on set, and it was a really amazing time. We worked on some really great projects like Final Destination 2, that bouncing log sequence, the logs on the freeway, and Blade Trinity, and that was a really cool time. And then I moved on from there to places like Prime Focus, Pixar Mondo, ScanlineVFX, and where I am now at Industrial Light and Magic. So that's a little bit about me and sort of my journey and how I've got to this point. Yeah. Advice to my younger self. I'd say don't minimize the impact and value of your work just because it comes easily to you. Recognize when to celebrate your natural talents, because not everyone can do what you're able to do. If you're in the room and there's nobody else that looks like you, then remember that's your superpower. You bring a unique perspective to what the group needs. You're in the room because you're meant to be there, so seize that moment. Always be willing to try something new. I think my only regrets have been when I passed on opportunities out of self-doubt. And good things have come when I've said, I've had that inquisitiveness, that curiosity, and that excitement and adventure, like moving to the States to start a new company. It's been great for me. So don't worry about failure. You either win or you learn. And don't be too focused on achieving some level, attaining a particular position. It's the experience, the growth, and the lessons that you learn along the way that are the things that you'll remember. The journey is the destination. What inspires me? Well, I've always enjoyed science fiction. And growing up, I was a huge bookworm. And so reading artists like Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Neil Stephenson, Ian Banks, and also graphic novels and comics. And I just would sort of lose myself in those worlds, in those pages, those rich, complex environments and those deep characters. And so I'm very excited by the possibility of bringing those things to life with compelling visuals. For the past sort of decade, I guess we've had that ability to do that, and it's really exciting to watch those worlds when they're up on the screen, but then also to be part of them. Collaboration with really talented, people from different points of view and from diverse backgrounds who all contribute towards that team effort of creating these rich worlds is something that's really enjoyable to me. The barriers to telling your own story and gaining an audience have just really dropped compared to what they were, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, and so, we've got 4K cameras on our phones and affordable drones and grading and editing software. So much of this is affordable so that there are very little sort of barriers between your imagination and ensuring that with an audience. And so I'm always inspired when I see filmmakers use these tools to tell rich, personal, specific stories. And I've always enjoyed animated shorts, just the ability for an individual to create a world that's very personal and specific to them, and then to share that vision with the world. And whenever I can be part of that, creating a world, creating sort of a unique point of view, and sharing that's always something that's very inspirational to me. And I love learning. I sort of through my journey, I've picked up things along the way. And initially, as I say, there was a bit of self-doubt. There was that, imposter syndrome, like, should I really be doing this? Do I deserve to do this? But as I sort of grew in my abilities as a supervisor and as an artist, then I was able to just sort of really embrace the ability to learn, and then anything that I can take on to then feed that into my work. And so I love learning. There are so many new tools. Every year, something new is coming out, or things are being refined. And I love diving into that and just learning, just teaching myself new things and seeing how I can use that to grow as an artist.